The High Court in Johannesburg has postponed a 60 billion rand lawsuit against 4 major banks. This is due to the litigants changing legal representation. Their attorney, Douglas Shaw, has now been removed from the case after failing to produce a Fidelity fund certificate. Let's take you live to court and to Newzroom Afrika's Zanika. Zanika, it was just yesterday when Douglas Shaw received a dressing down in court for this exact issue.
Yes, indeed, Michelle, that is correct. Yesterday, a lot of time was spent, in trying to address the issue of the certificate, which was not immediately available from Mr. Shaw. So the matter or the advice or the suggestion was that today there will be a way forward where Mr. Shaw would be able then to be given an opportunity to hand over that certificate to the court. However, there are still some issues that are still outstanding. So that certificate was not provided to the court. So the reason being that, there still need some processes that must be followed before the attainment of that certificate. But we'll dwell more on that a little bit later on. But let's get some immediate reactions now in terms of the Lungelo Foundation itself as the organization that has really been mobilizing and rallying all over 200 litigants who are behind this class action. I'm joined now by the president of the organization, Mr. Nkululeko. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. It's not been an easy past 24 hours for the litigants. Talk to us about the way forward now and your reaction to what has transpired over the 2 days, and how are you going to move forward now up until we get to March?
Yes, no, we will carry on with our case. We do have a case, a very, very strong case. One of the reasons why they are throwing Douglas under the bus is because they know very well how good he is. They are very much afraid of him, because he has won some cases for us with the banks. So they know him quite well. That is why they are trying by all means to discredit him. But that is not going to deter us from achieving what we want to do. Yeah. Now, the way forward, we have another lawyer, a human rights lawyer, who is equally good, who's going to work together with Douglas Shaw in our case. So now the case is going on next month in March. We'll be here again in thousands, because this is one case that involves millions and millions of people across our country. Because evictions are vicious, particularly in our country. Evictions should take 4 or 5 years before they can be effected. In South Africa, when you're left with 2 months to pay off your bond, you get evicted. There are people who lost their houses for a mere 5,000 rand, 10,000 rand. We have a house, one of our clients has got a house, which is worth 1.5 million rand, and it was sold for 1,000 rand. And we have a case that a house that cost 1.8 million rand was sold for 210,000 rand. Houses were sold for 1 rand, 10 rand, 100 rand, 700 rand. Now, you tell me, any person, economically viable people, evicted from their homes, now they are thrown out of the economic stream. They don't have a participation in the economic stream. And the thing is now, these politicians, they will never say anything about evictions. You can read their manifestos, go through their manifestos. Not a single party will ever say anything about evictions. Yet, they want the people to vote for them. And those people who have been evicted from their homes, how do they vote? If they do vote, it means that those votes are fraudulent.
I need to talk to Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Michelle, I am joined now by Mr. Douglas Shaw. He's going to be joining me now. Just a minute. Mr. Shaw, you can stand right there, sir. I'm going to come to you. Talk to us about the status of your certificate. Does it exist? When was the last time you reapplied for it? What's the status of your certificate?
I've had a Fidelity Fund certificate for, I think, about 6 or 7 years. 6. And ever since I was a trust fund advocate, and then I became an attorney. And that's for your Fidelity Fund, where people's money goes into, so that if somebody steals the money, then the Fidelity Fund will repay them. So you have one at all times, and I've had one for it gets renewed every year. But this year I changed to become an advocate, so to become an attorney. So it was a little bit of a more complicated process. And I've been dealing with the LPC about this, you know, and they've been helping me, and we've got accountants helping us.
Sorry to cut you, Mr. Shaw, but the consent here is that you cannot appear in court without that certificate being valid. So what happened there? Knowing very well that it's not valid, how did you end up to this particular stage where the High Court now has to recommend for disciplinary actions to be taken against you?
Yes. I mean, what actually happened is they gave me so much stuff to do. We only had 6 days to prepare for the trial after we got the papers from the bank. We had another action that ABSA brought against us at the same time. And just when you're preparing for the case and all you do every day is sit and read documents for the case,
I acknowledge that.
Other things you forget about.
I acknowledge that, but I'm just worried if you're going to say you forgot to take care of those administrative things when you're about to appear before a court of law. Because for you to be able to even present what you're preparing, you need to have that certificate ready.
That's correct. And I thought
to what extent do you take responsibility for that error
or for that? It was my mistake. Yes, it was my mistake. But it's just very difficult to keep up with everything at the same time. So, but yeah, it was. I mean, I forgot about it. There was.
All right. So the High Court judge now was not impressed yesterday. She continued affirming that sense of not being happy with your conduct. It's a criminal offence. She just said now she's going to recommend or be in touch with LPC to take disciplinary actions against you. Do you understand the consequences of your action, and what's your attitude or reaction to that?
I don't think she's saying I committed a criminal offence. That would have been if I'd actually appeared and started speaking and nobody knew about it. I don't think it's a criminal offence just simply not to have one. You've got to continue practising, coming to court and stuff, and nobody knows about it. I'm
asking your response to her stating that she's going to be in touch with the LPC for them to investigate your conduct.
Yes, well, obviously it's a concern. You'd prefer for these things not to happen. But I have been in touch with LPC about this all the way along. So I don't think LPC will have the concern that they would have with somebody that's trying to get away with not having one. I've been talking to them all the way. But yeah, banks are often giving me these extra things to do to try and keep me from attacking them, I think, basically.
So let's talk about the litigants now. Over 200 litigants were pinning their trust on you and your representation. It seems as if now there's a bit of a stumbling block. So what would you say to them for this era of forgetting to take care of that administrative thing? Because this case now has been postponed for another month. What's your message to them? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, we were so sorry that it's taken extra time, but good things could come out of it. I mean, there's more time to study. We only had 6 weeks before. Now I can take another 6 days before. Now I can take another whole month to go through the papers, make sure I've got them exactly right. So as a lot of the applicants were saying, you know, good things could come out of it. They were very supportive, the applicants. They were very kind to me. They were very, we'll get there, and more annoyed with the legal process and how it can work.
I mean, how prepared are you for the actual case? Forget about the admin we just discussed now. The actual case, the actual claim. Just remind the viewers again at home, what do the litigants want? What's your main argument, and what are you seeking out of these proceedings?
Right. We want the banks to pay back every single person back to 1994 where they've sold their house for less than it's worth, obviously minus the bond and stuff that they need to pay. And when they haven't sold as a last resort. So when they've sold somebody's house, when the rent could have been paid, they've now got a new job, or when somebody else is offering to pay for them, or when, and a number of 20 different things, when the house is nearly coming to an end and they could easily drop the amount that they've been paying. Yeah. There's so many things the banks have done wrong, so many things.
So in terms of then packaging that as an argument in court, because you want a class action. Actually, you are seeking for a certification that will enable you and your argument to be classified as a class action legally.
Correct.
What are the gaps you have identified in the system that will give your argument an opportunity at least to stand? What are the loopholes you've identified in terms of how these house evictions are processed, or what was missed or what was not done legally by the banks? I think that's what I'm trying to get.
Yeah, so the banks could have taken the properties and sold them through an estate agent. They could have contracted to do that after the judgment, and then they'd have got a far higher price. They could have taken what they call properties into possession. So they could have seen the property at the sheriff's auction worth $1 million, going for $200,000, and said, no, we'll buy it at $500,000 and then sell it for $800,000 or something like that. They could have just decided not to sell the person's house. They should have said, this sheriff system is working so badly that we're not going to use the sheriff's auction. Right? We're going to reschedule the loan. We're going to do something else. But they didn't.
But one would say, if I'm a financial institution, we sign a contract, I explain to you the terms and conditions, and you are expected, or you commit yourself to paying those monthly bonds. Therefore, if there was that agreement that was signed, why do you have to come to court now and say, well, you evicted me illegally? To what extent do the litigants themselves take responsibility for their own maybe lack of knowledge? I'm not sure how to define it, but to what extent do the litigants themselves take responsibility for getting to a point where they get evicted from the house?
There is a point at which you have to liquidate a property and sell it. It's just that we do it 100 times too much. So there's the point where there's no return. The person's got no money whatsoever. The house has huge amounts in arrears, but mostly it's not that situation. Mostly, so how much the responsibility? Well, certainly not for their lack of knowledge. That's why there's the courts, because the courts have decided, no, people don't have enough knowledge. They have to come before the courts so that we can check if there's other ways. But the banks are still, even though there's a legal law that says last resort, they'll still try and sell a person's property when it's not a last resort. They say they do, but they don't.
Let's talk about the figure. We're talking about 60 billion rands here. Give me a context in terms of how you got to that amount, but then let's say you win that case. How then that money, end up in my father's hands or bank account? And you're also talking about seeking, a home beyond this particular process. Can you explain that? Talk to me, explain the figures, 60 billion rands, why, how did you come to that, and how is it going to end up in the pockets of the litigants?
Okay, there's a special entity called a class action administrator. It all goes to them in the first instance from the banks, and then the banks distribute it. So you claim, and you say my house was sold for 20,000 when it was worth 200,000, and the guy will look at it and go, well, okay, you're owed 180,000, and they'll bill the bank for that, and then they'll take some costs off, and then they'll send it out to the person. So that's how it actually works.
I mean, the president, this particular case can actually, initiate or start, because now we're talking about over 200 people. If you succeed, the many more other people that can come through beyond this phase. I understand even now you are still having people who are coming forward after knowing about this particular case and say, I was evicted. What's the extent of this problem in terms of the number of people? I know that many people have been, evicted from their homes, but in terms of now creating or starting this precedence of people having to be compensated by the banks, how crucial is this date? How important is this case in that context?
Well, it's so important, and it's at least 100,000 people. That's conservative, and we reckon they've maybe lost on average maybe 600,000. So if you multiply that up, you get 60 billion. Yeah. But it might not be 60 billion. It might be 10. It might be 5. I think most people would be happy if they got back 100,000 rand or 200,000 rand or something like that. But we reckon 60 billion, and it might be more. It might be that there's been more than 100,000 people back to the Constitution. And the banks have always resisted change. If they'd been trying to go, this is a bit of a problem, but again and again, they've hit people with huge drops in the value of their property, wiped them out.
Mr. Shaw, let's thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir. That's Mr. Douglas Shaw, who is the attorney of the litigants, over 200 of them are pinning their hopes on their success on this particular case. But as we now know that it has since been postponed to the 26th of March 2016. That's where now the actual hearings are expected to start. Should the new legal representative of the litigants be ready for that particular moment. So that's where we leave it. It's back to you in studio, Michelle, for now.